Adding hosts through the web UI works fine if you're adding 1 or 2 hosts. If you want to monitor a lot of hosts though, you probably want to automate it. checkmk has a REST API which allows you to make changes using a specially crafted HTTP request and will use it to add a host, scan for services and activate those changes. For checkmk's REST API, we'll use a special user called automation. It exists by default and you can find it in Setup, Users. Click Edit next to its name. Scroll down a bit to this part, Automation Secret for Machine Accounts. Generate a secret. Copy that, save it to your password manager and click Save. And then activate those changes. Back in terminal, I'll create a new script inside agent directory called addhost.sh. First, a note that I didn't write this script from scratch. I've modified the existing script from checkmk's REST API documentation page. We will run this script on the host we wish to monitor. You can read it in detail, but the gist is that I'm gathering some information about the host. I'm setting the checkmk API URL and automation secret, and then I'm adding the host, scanning for services, and activating the changes. Save the file, make it executable with chmod +x, and open .env file also in agent directory. We have checkmk API URL and automation secret variables here. Save the file and open setup host script again. At the end, add these 3 lines, which will first create a directory named agent inside the already existing directory checkmk. Then we will copy add host and .env files to that directory. And finally, we will SSH to that host and run the script. Before we run the script, we need to do a few things. First, go back to the checkmk's web UI, go to Setup Hosts and delete this host so that we can add it again. Activate the changes. Second, because REST API works over HTTP, we need to modify traffic labels for checkmk, specifically the IP whitelist middleware. If I run the add host script from the VPS, the request would come from the public IP of the VPS, and traffic would block the connection because that IP is not listed here in the IP whitelist subnets. You can either continue to add IPs to this list, or if you have a ton of hosts, you can disable the middleware altogether and rely on checkmk's login page for security. I'll open checkmk's Docker Compose, comment out whitelist lines, save the file, open setup.yml, leave only checkmk role active, save the file and run Ansible again. Ansible has finished, and if I go to the traffic's dashboard and click on HTTP middlewares here, I will see that there's no middleware for checkmk anymore, meaning that anyone that asks for checkmk.diodhp.com, traffic will forward the connection, no questions asked. We can now save setuphost.sh and run it again. Script has finished, and in the beginning of the output, it complained that we need to run systemctl daemon reload to reload units. This happened because the socket file was overwritten, and you need to run this command whenever you change systemd service or socket file. We didn't change it now, so we don't have to do it this time, but just in case we change it in the future, open setuphost.sh again, add the suggested line just after you copy the socket file, and change this start to restart. Save the file again. Back in checkmk's web UI, click Monitor All Hosts, and we can see that the host was added successfully using the REST API. For other things you can do with REST API, you can check the documentation here by clicking on Help and then REST API documentation. Before we test notifications, we must add an email address for this account. Click Setup, Users, then click pencil next to the CMK admin user and enter the email address. In order for this user to receive notifications, we must also add it to a so-called contact group. Check everything, click Save, and activate the changes. In Setup Contact Groups, you can define other contact groups. It should be clear that you can have different contact groups for different users and all that in combination with different services or hosts. Yes, it can get complicated quite fast. We can now sit and wait that something happens to one of the services so that we can receive the notification, or we can send a fake check result. Go to Monitor All Hosts, click on your host, choose one of the services, click Commands here, expand the list with these 3 dots here, click Fake Check Results, type something in the plugin output, and choose which notification you want to send. Confirm. After a few moments, there are new emails in my mail client. They are in checkmk folder because I used the plus checkmk for the email address. The first one was CPU load OK to critical, and then because it was a fake check result, it resolved from critical to OK.